Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's lecture. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule. This is a very interesting subject. I want to tell you the truth about the deal around 40 acres and a mule. Now, if you ever heard of 40 acres and a mule, I want you to put the comment down below. When I first heard of it, I thought, okay, so every slave, once they were freed, got 40 acres and a mule, but that's not what happened at all. So, welcome everybody. I'm Lady TrenettWilson, your lecturer and social historian, and I want to thank all of my royalers. Thank you all so much for your support. And if you're new here, hello, welcome. I hope you enjoy today's lecture. Now, everybody, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, around this 40 acres thing, I had a lot of questions like who represented us and made this deal? And I also wanted to know why only 40 acres because most plantations were 100 acres or more. You see, after the Civil War, Lincoln's government was looking for a way to help newly freed Black people kind of level the playing ground for them and punish the Confederacy. So those people who had owned plantations, he wanted to punish them in some way. Not only that, though, not only had Africans spent their blood and their sweat and their tears building the country up until that point, but they also fought in the Union Army. So the Union would not have won without the participation of Black soldiers. So they were thinking, okay, what can we do in order to make this happen? So he planned a meeting on January 12th, 1865, and he met with church leaders, community leaders, across the nation to figure out what they can do. Now, a man named Garrison Frazier spoke for the Black people. And basically, what his whole idea was is that Black people needed land. They needed land because without land, you couldn't farm. And remember, during that time, agriculture was the main way that people made money. So he wanted land. The people said, yes, yes, we want land. And so that was the main conversation that came out of that. So Sherman said, okay, I'm going to take this back to the president. I think what we'll do is we'll do 40 acres and a mule. But let's be very clear. The order that he passed, and it was called the Special Order Number 15. The order that he wrote up wasn't really legal because, it was just a general kind of signing a verbal contract, if you will, with these group of Black people who had gathered together to voice their grievances. So it wasn't legal. That was number one problem. The other part was it wasn't 40 acres and a mule. It was up to 40 acres and the use of a mule that was from the Union Army. So the person didn't even own the mule. He could use it if he needed it. Now, if you tilling land and farming land, wouldn't you need a mule? Especially during that time. This is back in 1865. So I think you would need a mule. Put your comment down below if you're a farmer. I think you do. So, what he did was the order reserved 400,000 acres of confiscated land along the coast of Georgia, Florida, and Carolina. So, let's dispel the other notion that it was countrywide. It wasn't. It was in 3 states, and they were on the coast. So Blacks who were migrating from the South and even from the North, because there was a lot of discrimination in the North, there was a lot of poverty in the North. So here you had an opportunity after slavery to go to a place that this would be your land, you owned it, and it was the former land of the slave owner. Now the country had went through a whole war behind slavery. And some would say, oh, no, no, it wasn't about slavery. It was really about cotton and the fact that in the South, that was their main way of making income. Well, then why, if that was the main way they made income, why couldn't they have hired Black people to work as workers on their farm instead of beating them, separating their families? So Yeah, it was about slavery, or a whole lot was about slavery. So until we can have honest discussions around what happened in the past, I think it's just gonna keep popping up, keep popping up. And this is a major thing because these people were supposed to get this 400,000 acres in this place, right? So within a few months, with the help of the Freedmen's Bureau, they worked together with the government to begin to relocate these people and give them land. So here they are setting up on their land, building little general stores, building little places for children, for schools, all of that. They began to build communities. Now kind of starting to sound familiar in Oklahoma, right? So here on this coast, they are building their land. They're starting to actually till the land. Now you can imagine the person who used to own the land, the slave owner, is looking at this saying, oh, is this what we're doing now? And so they were very angry. So despite the fact that they were trying to build, they were, meeting with a lot of opposition from the former people. You know what? Let me tell you something. Racist sentiment was so horrible, even after the Civil War, that they unalived President Lincoln in April of 1865. Now, Lincoln's VP was a staunch Southern Democrat, and he was deeply racist. His name was Andrew Johnson. Excuse me, Andrew Jackson. And he hated Black people. He felt like they should be subservient to white people and they should really still be slaves. So he rolled back all of Lincoln's rules, all of Lincoln's orders, everything, even stuff that had been passed in the Congress. He rolled it back. The first thing that he did was he removed federal troops from these southern states. So now they were no longer protected from these people who were attacking them. At least in the past, if they were attacking them, they did have the feds who would step in and fight for them, but they didn't have that now. So now, no federal troops. The other thing that they did immediately was take the land back that they had just given them. So the people weren't even on the land for a year because he was unalived in April of 1865. The deal was signed in January, and by December they had to give their land up. So this all happened in 1 year. So the Black people coming out of the horrible trauma of slavery, promised 40 acres or up to 40 acres and a use of a mule, then all of a sudden it's no, 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 we're not doing that. It's something different now. We taking your land, and they took it by force. And so they lost a lot of the land. The people had to flee from those areas because of the extreme racism. And the Freedmen's Bureau, which was supposed to help, also, they were they were non-effect, they were powerless, and they didn't do nothing. They just let everything happen. So instead of 40 acres and a mule, they were treated to another 200 years of black code, the Jim Crow laws, and extreme races in the Ku Klux Klan. And not only that, the people who had just owned the land, the blacks that it was given to, now had to become sharecroppers on the land. They made them sign extremely horrible labor contracts. So they had to work back on the land, and they gave the land back to the person who had enslaved them. So that's what was going on in the 1860s. And not only that, do you know that they gave white families something called, they passed a law, and it was called the Homestead Act of 1862, which gave them, white people, land grants, while blacks were stripped of their property and just torn apart. So instead of the Reconstruction period leading to black people and having financial independence, it led to these horrible conditions for them all the way up into the 20th century. So that's why when people say, well, I didn't have nothing to do with that and my ancestors didn't have anything to do with it, I don't understand why they're so mad. It's 2025. You all, the the absolute trickery and hatred and vitriol and stealing and abuse that Black people took for over 300 years. And now it's only been 30 years or 40 years and we supposed to forget about it. Some of our grandparents are still alive. Some of our great parents are still alive and had to live through this. Now, the wonderful thing is I don't have to live in this. And that because of these people's sacrifices, that we don't have to live in the pain of the current situation of what they did then. But Black history is important because you can never forget where we came from, the sacrifices that we paid, and the mistakes that were made. What were some of the mistakes in the negotiations? And we thank Mr. Garrison Frazier for standing up and speaking for us. But some of the things that we got wrong was, number one, we didn't make sure that Lincoln made it an executive order to codify it in law. So because it was a handshake, a wink, I hope things turn out right type of situation, then it never did anything. Number two, we didn't make the Freedmen's Bureau sign some kind of agreement with wherever there was an office, that if there was a Freedmen's Bureau there, that there's troops had to be there because those were federal workers and they had to protect the federal people. So we didn't do that. Number three, Lincoln picked the wrong vice president, but because he needed to bring on some Southern Democrats. We know that Lincoln was a Republican, and the Ku Klux Klan and all this ugliness, these were Democrats who were doing this. And before everybody switched to, Black people switched to the Democratic Party, they used to vote Republican. So before that, he chose this Democrat who hated Blacks. So, but he needed those votes in order to become president. So the compromise became too much of a burden to bear. You know, 40 acres in a mule, no thank you. That was that no. I would have came together, asked for 100 acres. The troops would have had to cover. It had to been for 2 years. We would have had a militia. We would have had, built up some kind of weaponry. So we could have done a lot of different things. Now you tell me down below what else we could have included in that deal that would have made it better than 40 acres and a mule. You all, thank you all so much for joining me. I so loved talking about this subject because I want to know where Black wealth came from. Oh, by the way, voting rights, a fund for us, and no income taxes. Okay, that's it. That's it. All right, y'all. Thanks for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed today's lecture, that you learned a lot. So when we talk about 40 acres and a mule, we understand. We have the talking points as to why that didn't work, what we needed in order for it to work, and what we need today for us to move forward financially. So thank you all so much for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Now don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. And you want to learn about some more great history, click on one of those videos right there below. Also, don't forget to pick up your Royal Black and Elite t-shirt and represent. Thanks for watching.